Evening, everybody. That time of the week again. Yeah, happy days. Looking forward to this one. Got a guest very special on lined up. You might have seen it done out already, and one fellow tubers. So, looking forward to seeing what he's got to say. But other than that, not too much to report at the minute. To be honest with you, I've been quite busy with fish selections this week. Needless to say, there's going to be a lot of nice It's a show floating around at some point. And yeah, a nice video on them coming up as well. Update. I think you're going to be impressed with what they've done so far. I'm going to apologise in advance again if you're struggling with the signal or from my end. I can see it on the screen. It's dotting in and out. It really is shocking up here, but that's BT for you. Yeah. Other than that, we've finished off all the bits and bobs for the NND Mud Pond event today. So there's a video coming on Friday to announce all the details for that one. So look out for that. Again, really excited. Great opportunity this for a lot of people to experience something that could sometimes and more often than not be out of reach at a great farm as well. And yeah, that's it really. Weather's been an absolute cracker today, which took everyone by surprise, I think, given the amount of rain we've all been paddling through recently and cloud and stuff. So great British summer, keeps us on our toes. And yeah, Heeltsori, my Heeltsori pond had a bit of a thin out as well. We'll be doing a video update on that next week. Had to be done. Growth was still piling on. I just weren't getting the body volume gains that I needed without really stepping that feed up to crazy levels. So actually half the stocking level, and I'm still feeding the 2.68 kilo a day, and they're still taking it like absolute troopers. So yeah, that's pretty cool, and they're starting to fly now as well. So just before we get into it, please, hit share, hit like, so we can get as much reach on this as possible. And yeah, Koi appreciation for the end of the video. I've put together a few videos of what I think I would say is possibly one of my favorite fish in my collection out in Japan at the minute. Absolutely stunning Goshki from Mariju Koi Farm. Quite an interesting lineage. And yeah, a great sort of look and insight into this one on some body progression and development and expectations around body for age and things like that. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that one. So yes, let's bring on Frank, our guest for this evening, and see what questions he's got to fire at me. How you doing, Frank?
All good, mate. All good. You?
Happy days. Yeah, sound. You're going to flip that camera around and show everyone that pond of yours, just so they can put a name to the face of the pond.
How do I spin it round? Is it possible, or do you just have to spin it?
That'll do. Look at that. Absolutely stunning, mate. Cracking job, that. Cracking job. Love it.
Give them some grub. I think I scared them to death
as well, buddy.
They're not used to floating food.
Nice. Look well.
Yeah.
So tell us about you, your journey, your YouTube channel, bits and bobs. Fill everybody in who might not be aware.
Yeah. So first built my pond in 2018, just as part of like a garden project. Yeah. And then, like most other folks, just slowly took over. Went from like just being a pond, like literally started off just with like an Nexus system, blade, same as everyone does. And then within like 6 months, I was like, right, start to get some bigger fish. Then I got sick to death cleaning the Nexus. So like, right, move on to a drum. I was like, every night I was like getting home to look at the fish. I was like, oh, Mrs. was like, you spend more time cleaning your filters than you do looking at the fish. So I was like, right, I'll get a drum. So yeah, went through the motions, just slowly like building up my collection, and then just progressively got further and further into it. And then obviously with the YouTube channel, the Koi channel, that was like a bit of a lockdown project to keep me sane between the ears.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah, it's slowed down a bit now because life started again. But I will pick it back up in winter or something like that. So,
you've got to enjoy your hobby in between it all, mate, as well, haven't you?
Yeah, that's it. I kept trying to, you know how hard it is trying to plan pond visits to go and film them, and then the night before it's my fish aren't looking too clever, or one's flicking, one's splashing. It's like, oh, come on, mate, There's always going to be one.
It's very tough. It is very tough. Luckily, I've got a good team who keep on it, but yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah.
So go on, mate. What we got lined up?
So I've got a few questions.
Yeah.
What I think you would answer well.
Okay.
And then one thing which was like to start off with was from a comment about the RO.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've seen anti-RO almost because you like to keep things simple.
Yep.
But also, like you're very much of the worry about the pollutants that are getting through into our water, which is a definite.
Yep.
So I first installed RO as one of my early lockdown projects.
Yeah.
And I'd had this 2-step carcass actually move a couple of shimmies.
Yeah.
So I took them off, and as you're learning about it, I started to notice that the more you learn is the softer the water, the less likely it is in general for most lines to get shimmies. And this is one of my questions for you. So I'll move on to that in a bit. But so I was like, right, I want to soften the water. You watch all the YouTube videos, soften the water.
Yeah.
So does that, starts to run it quite skinny at about 1, pH about 7.2. But I could never keep the fish happy. And there was no way I was going to fit a dosing pump because I've heard of so many disasters where people have relied on it. It's not dosed, it's gone to shit. So,
what was you wanting to fit a dosing pump for?
To dose bicarb. So run RO only.
Yeah.
And then that dose the bicarb.
Yeah.
But then what I found over time was I could never get the filters going with the KH really low.
Yeah.
So I don't. There's loads of lads that run KH really low and they do all right, but I just couldn't do it. So over time, I sort of started to bring it up, and I've found now that I know most people run RO to have soft water, but I have my KH at 5.
Yep.
Which is so like for someone like yourself, obviously, running RO would be really hard work with all them ponds. But for all these people that do want a consistent feed into the pond, but don't want the pollutants, RO, and then just manually dosing bicarb. And honestly, it's really not hard. I don't even do it. The missus just puts me 2 scoops in the morning, and that's it. And then I just literally do I just use the Salifert one.
Yeah.
And then if the water's starting to track higher, like the KH is rising, I'll just ask her just to miss a morning. Or if it's starting to track lower, just add another scoop one night. And that is honestly as hard as it needs to be with RO. If you're not running it on one of these that's running it on a knife edge. Because I get so many people
I'm that whole knife edge thing. I can never get behind. What you're saying makes complete and utter sense. Obviously, the angle I come from, it's not that I hate RO. I understand it's completely the best way we could deliver the purest sort of water. And if we could do it in a way like the marine guys do and remineralize and prep all that water, obviously we're just working with such big volumes, then I'd be all over it. The reason I'm sort of not is, and my angle coming into this, which I have tried to explain, is that simply my whole issue with this is at the start of it, there seems to be so many people under the impression that they need RO in order to be a successful koi keeper or grow fish. That's the sort of the thing, like with the whole water purification stuff. Because you're just starting to try and deliver a message, you've got to start really at the most blunt point. So with the water, it's just like, stop doing that until you know what's going on with your water.
Yeah.
And like with RO, I wanted to challenge because it's not true that you can't deliver the results by not running RO. Yeah. And for me, it's opening people's up minds. It's quite easy to get sucked into these worlds where it leads you to believe if I run RO, I produce jumbo fish. Yeah, and it's that stuff I need to tackle because the layers of complexity. Yeah, great, run RO, but then you don't heat your water. So you're never going to grow your fish anyway. Or you run RO, you eat your water, and you feed them Rice Krispies. So we're still not going to do it. Or even that, you feed them sake curry, you run RO, you heat your water, you've got every bit of filtration kit going, but you don't select the right fish, and you don't truly know how to feed them properly.
Yeah.
Because a little bit like you saying, the guys running RO on a knife's edge, feeding to make jumbo fish real, the powerhouses that you see, you're kind of feeding on a knife's edge as well.
Yeah.
So that's just where I sort of started with it. Where you're at makes a complete and utter sense. And again, Frank, if it works for you, mate, hats off to you, and keep on with it. That's what I'm all about.
But like for me, like I try to keep everything as linear as possible. So if I'm like, that's like, I don't like the thought of the top up dosing, like the top up, not having a trickle and topping up, because I think, well, it's going to, rather than the water go through the filters nice and slow, giving them every bit of chance to get it out, you're dumping a load of water in, adjusting the pH, KH, temperature, and that's a bit of a shock. So I think if you can have a trickle but have good water coming through it, it's always a winner.
Even that with a trickle, obviously it's an evolving conversation, because again, people do need to do more research. But again, the whole thing with the trickle is seeing the amount of people flooding excessive volumes of water through the system to the point where the system isn't really dependent on that water. And, you know, so many issues arising from that. And all it simply is, what you've described there, I'm completely in tune with. If you're trickling just to basically top up what's needed, great. If people 100%. Out there, that's what they're doing. But you can do that by having an auto top up that's going to cut off when your water's where it needs to be, and control it and set it all up that way. It's still the same sort of difference. It's just the excessive use of the water, where you're just literally flushing it all down your overflow was the bit that I've got an issue with. Yeah,
like back a long while ago now, before RO, I'd probably have the trickle at a couple of litres a minute, loads going in. Whereas now I've got about 450, 480 mils a minute going in of RO. So just pure RO. No blending. I used to blend it, and then say if the KH needed to come up a bit, I just open up the tap a bit and mix it. But now I've just cut that off and just literally bicarb only, and the fish look so much better for it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more stable.
Yeah.
So
if it's working for you, mate, fair play. But I'm just all about that ultimate simplicity.
But if you used to see, just literally, I'll actually have to do nothing other than the missus chucks 2 scoops of bicarb, and there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
If you run it on a knife edge, don't get me wrong, you got to be on the ball. Like one day I came home from holiday, and it was nearly gone. There was half a drip went in, and it was at the end.
Yeah.
So, ready for some questions?
Fair play. Yeah. But I'm glad you thought it's a conversation I want to keep having with people. But it's just so people understand the true angles of it. And like I say, as it stands, even now, I mean, episode 26, it's not a long time to be hammering these other concepts into people's minds after years and years of the same shit being spoon fed to people. Yeah.
See, I'm one of these strange people that has to find my own way and do my own workings out and make my own mistakes. Don't get me wrong.
The best way.
I do think this fish here, the Kajaku, when the water was softer, the skin looked better, and the Benny stayed nicer. As soon as the waters got harder and obviously easier to run the pond, you do start to get the shimmies appearing, like black blotches, compared to when it was soft. So I do think it has its benefits, but just for stability and enjoying a pond, I couldn't agree more. Get that.
I'll always counter that one though, Frank. Just prime example: Shisui and Iowa Cabba, two of the worst varieties for Sumi up, darkening up, shimmying up. And I've got a client out Manchester way whose water is soft as hell out the tap. And he cannot keep them in his water. He absolutely trashes them.
Yeah.
Whereas you give them to me here, and I keep them looking absolutely mint. It's just can be certain fish sometimes reacting to different waters. It's a whole crazy game with so many variables just to manage to pinpoint one thing and say it's fair play. If you've noticed it's doing better in that softer water, it might be a fish that is more suited to that environment. But likewise, the sort of shimmy thing you mentioned, there's plenty of breeders in Japan suffer like mad with this.
Yeah.
And we're typically saying, Japan's soft water everywhere. Within reason. It's, hues of Benny, especially with Kohaku, seem to be more crucial and prone to shimmying than just reaction to water. But not denying it, not saying it's not true, just saying there's a lot of variables to consider, and it's never just that sort of matter of fact that soft water does this, that, and the other.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If I was taking these to a show and I was going to go and buy some expensive Kohakus, I'd probably be tempted to drop it back down. But I just want to finish work and come and chill by my pond and everything look happy. So
fair play. Right, hit me with some of these questions then.
Extreme heat.
Yes, good fun.
What do you class as too hot? So like the other week went 40°C.
Yep.
How did you get on in your polytunnels?
Well, I'd like the viewers watching just to drop in the comments what pond temperatures they actually hit ambiently. I'm curious to know, because I seem to think even with that extreme heat, it didn't really do what it probably needed to. My polytunnels, I think the water tapped out at 31 degrees on the hottest day.
So did that damage any Benny?
No. Only Benny that was on the way out anyway. A couple of fish that I knew were on rocky grounds, and it just helped push them over the edge. But no, it didn't touch the colour.
Right.
Sumi hates it. Sumi hates it.
Yeah.
It drives me mad. But no, Benny, no.
Yeah, I've got IO 24. So the night before we had that really hot day, I turned the heater off altogether so it won't kick in at night.
Yeah.
And then it went up to, I think 27.3 is the highest I went.
Yeah.
But that was it. After that, it chilled out.
Yeah. All that heat does with Benny, it generally, don't get me wrong, if you're pushing extreme heat for a long time, so if you're hitting that 25 and above, you're pushing the fish really hard, you are going to stretch that colour. There's no doubt. But this is why I do use colour foods and use it quite a lot, because I've got to support that colour as I'm stretching it out and try and help push it back through. But what it does with poor quality fish, it just exposes bad Benny. If that fish cannot hack it, it's going to fall apart. The minute you hit that sort of heat and that growth pattern, that Benny's gone. It just exposes poor quality.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the Sumi, I did the Black Diamonds coat because mine didn't do that well.
No, mate, that already started. I was expecting this when I bought them. I had a conversation with Chris, because ultimately, strip it all back, it's a common reel. And normally, any common reel, the minute I get them in an intensive growth cycle, this is why they're such elusive beasts when you want a high quality big common reel. The minute the heat hit, and I'm only talking my sort of 24, 25s, even then it was holding out. It's when then the growth come and I started really pushing the body and the length out, it just drops off. But this is what happened. But the Sumi that dropped off, some that's already started re-emerging, which is a normal part of the process, is looking even better than when we started. And that is the normal part of the process. And you'll probably find a completely a new pattern will re-emerge by the time, winter, when you're deep into winter sort of hits.
Yeah, I'm with you. See, I noticed with mine, so mine last year, it dropped off, almost went white.
Mm-hmm.
Then in winter, it came back. And by the time we'd got to April, and I brought the temperature up to 18, and then I held it there for quite a while just to get everything working again.
Yeah.
And the Sumi was coming, looked great. Went fishing, came back, and it was white again. It was literally like, walked up to the pond, I was like, where's your colour gone?
They are fascinating. Sumi's fascinating stuff anyway, temperature, sort of stress, how stress can affect it as well. It really is a bit of a mind bender at times, but I did quite well not to swear then. What was in my head? But yeah, it's an interesting one. But yeah, you just got to ride it out. But the extreme heat normally is always going to knock it back. And even with any we show or go Sankey as well. At certain ages, what I tend to find is even sometimes Nisai going into Sanzai, you'll have a phase where as you sort of kick the heat back up, you can knock the Sumi back. But there comes a point normally sort of Sanzai and beyond where the genetics will kick in, and the age part of the Sumi progression will help push it up. But it's also why if you're conditioning fish for a show, you do want to try and avoid those excessive temperatures, sort of maxing out at sort of 22 probably to try and keep it stable. But things aren't always possible.
Yeah.
But as you say, 18 is a magical temperature for fish conditioning in general. And Sumi, everyone thinks excessively cold water is good for Sumi. 18 degrees, absolutely magical.
You know, I had a period, I came out of winter and we'd been on holiday for Christmas, and then we got back, the fish didn't look that happy.
Yeah.
Brought the temperature up to 18, just held it, changed absolutely nothing, same amount of food, same everything. And they've never looked happier.
Yeah.
At 18.
Good.
So that leads me to the next one.
Yeah.
So you're buying a Tosai or maybe a Nisai.
Yeah.
Something with a bit of Sumi, a Showa or a Sankey.
Yeah.
When you're looking at that Sumi, what are you looking for that tells you that it's going to come up and it's going to stay up? What?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh my God! Right.
Yeah, that is a good one.
So many variations to all this. I think the biggest bit is knowing if it's going to come up. This is at times, I don't want to sound, my eyes, just experience looking sometimes tells it, and trying to translate that into words and descriptions is not easy.
Yeah,
however, it's important to understand the different Sumi types as well, understanding the lineage, but then also understanding sort of variety specific growth patterns, which are really, so if we take, we'll focus on Showa. We've done quite a bit in the appreciation bits on this in past couple of weeks. So you've got two types of Sumi that we've shown. The one where we've got the Sumi that sits and develops more in the top of the skin, like the fish we showed last week. And then we've got the other type that looks like, when it's younger, like the Kage effect in the skin, where you can see all that grey underlying part there. Now, these are two very different beasts. That grey underlying part, you see it a lot in Dainichi Showa. We'll focus on them. That is just very unreliable. So what you see in there is you're seeing the whole Sumi pattern. Generally, you see it all masked up there on the fish. It's just that grey blue colour. And what I'm looking for there is some kind of progression of Sumi on the body somewhere. So if that's all greyed out, it could be within them grey areas. It could be the Motogoro in the fin, some Sumi that's developed on the head. Even sometimes, you have to be wary sometimes when you've got that Kage effect and it's Subo Sumi sat on the white ground. That if you look at Sumi that's sat on the Bene, that can be a bit misleading, because there are certain lineages of fish where if you get that effect, you might not ever get uniform development. The Kage style Sumi on the Shiroji is just going to sit down, whereas that on the Bene can progress and come through faster. Now, there's not that many where we see that. But what you'll often find is, like some of them Dainichi Showa, you get some on the Bene that's a bit more progressed, but you'll also see elements within the Sumi on the Shiroji where you've got that same progression, almost like little dots within the middle of the scales or around the edge of the scales where it starts forming. When I've got that in conjunction with some, somewhere on the body, the Motogoro, the head, or on the Bene, where obviously the Bene's shoving that Sumi up a little bit, that's why it's sat there. With that lineage and my experience now of having them, that's enough to know that Sumi will at some point come up. However, then there's all the variables to this in how you're keeping it, how it could possibly react to your water. And the biggest thing with a Dainichi fish, an example, is time. This is not a process you're going to rush, because that sort of Sumi needs time to work its way from deep in the skin up to the surface and form. That's why you see it go through the different hues of grey over the years before you eventually get the Sumi, because it's coming up and developing. But that's not to say that, to be honest with you, is less reactive to environmental stuff like heat and all them things. That sort of Sumi just needs time in most cases. not in all cases. The other sort of sumi, the stuff that comes up, so you see absolutely nothing. You're looking at a shower that looks like a kohaku with a few shimmies on it. Them ones are exciting. If you like seeing fish change radically, you need that sort of sumi. However, that sort of sumi is massively temperamental. You can't predict where that pattern's going to come, because what you'll get is you'll be looking at some shiroji, all of a sudden you'll see a couple of shimmies. Then before you know it, when it's on that process, you've got half a block of sumi. And then before you know it, you've got a completely different fish.
Yeah.
That's the sort of sumi that from cranking down in winter, going from your growing season to your winter season, you'll see progression quickly and really quickly. Yeah. Because it just, when it's in the right environment, it just flies. But it's also the sort of sumi that will react nasty to a big bump in temperatures. You know, these summer ones that you talk about, all of a sudden you get a big blast of temperature, that sumi goes, don't like this, and vanishes again.
Yeah.
So it's, but like I say, and there's always specific, you get that sort of style of sumi in some Dainichi fish, but not all. It's not the typical style at Dainichi. Whereas like the Umo shows I've featured, they were, that surface sort of sumi, they were renowned for it. It was an inherent trait with those fish. You rarely ever saw the other style of sumi. And if you saw that Dainichi style of sumi on these Umo showa, it's a fish I generally stay away from, because it can be that sort that sort of shows it. It gives you the hope that, that'll develop one day, and then it never does.
Mm. Yeah,
I've got Sanki are even more interesting. Wife's watching again, getting all clued up. Look, yes, the Sanki are a real interesting one, because again, you do get the sort of two different types of sumi going on, but it's more prevalent where you're just getting sumi come out of nowhere. Given it's a very inherent trait with Sakai fish, and given how much sumi is in, how much Sakai blood is in Sanki in general these days, it's becoming a more and more widespread and common trait in fish. But you look at, again, you know, the Sakai stuff, so you can get a lot of Sakai Sanki that when you're looking as Tosai and Nisai, you're looking mainly at a kohaku and very unpredictable sumi progression. Yeah. You've got to take a chance, but I would always take a chance, knowing from what I've seen of them and what I've had of them, it comes. Most of the time, it comes somewhere. You're just gambling on where. That's the element with that. You get other Sankis. Who are we talking here?
See that one?
Yeah.
Where's she gone? This Tamora Sanki.
Yeah.
See the gap in the back.
Yeah.
Between the Benny plate.
Yeah.
That was like dots. See this one? This was like in lines. That's faded with the heat.
Right, so that sumi there you're talking is a more predictable type of sumi. So what you're seeing there, that one I can see clearly. That is the difference there. The two Sankis you've just shown, Frank, are them two differences in sumi styles.
That's what I'm getting from that.
Completely. So, that bigger Sanki where you can see it all sat there. That's never really going to change too much. All you'll get there is, sometimes it might dip a bit. Sometimes it'll come back up. Again, temperature could affect that. But the sumi pattern itself is probably always going to stay that way. Whereas that other one you showed, that's sumi for sure. That's the one in the surface of the skin. And that's just going to be a joyful ride on that. You just never truly know exactly where that's going to end up.
Yeah. The one with the spots, when I first seen it online for sale, I thought, if that sumi was to come up in that gap, that'd just make it nice.
Yeah.
And then when it arrived, it was on its way. Then we were like, do you reckon it's going to do it? I was thinking, I think it'll do it. And then it's slowly but surely, it's starting to look nice.
Yeah. Just got to address one comment that's just come through here that Ricky's clearly punching, ain't he? Bit harsh, folks. Come on. But no, I agree.
No.
Got lucky with that one.
Must have a big peduncle, Ricky?
Fair play, mate. Fair play. So that's what you've got there, buddy. It's knowing. I think the biggest thing is knowing the two types of sumi first of all, because when you can get your head around which one you're looking at, you can probably know what sort of journey you're going to be in for with it, and then just other variants are probably more specific to lineages, which you'll get.
Yeah.
And knowing them, that's just harder knowledge to obtain, unfortunately. And you know, a lot of that knowledge, I don't just go around asking a breeder, how do your fish develop? a lot of it I've gained is from having those fish, having them, seeing them either in Japan or over here, and you just get to see it over time. Your eye just soaks it all up. Because also, sometimes how they'll develop in Japan is different to how they might develop over here in my pond, and even then how they'll develop in your pond.
Yeah.
So there's so many, always with it, so many variations and little nicks to pick up. But generally, I think if you learn those two different styles of Sumi, interestingly as well, this surface Sumi, that we're talking about in Tosai, that can sometimes show in full glory. So you could be looking at a Sankey, a banging pattern, thinking, oh yes. The minute you get that growing, and it's the term that's been sort of coined, baby Sumi. The minute you get it growing, it all just vanishes.
Yeah.
You get that sort of 15, 20 centimetre fish that it's 35, 40, and there's just no Sumi.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever. If a fish like that is growing well and it's got all the Benny qualities and everything there, never give up on it, because it's literally only probably 6 months away from re-emerging and coming back even better than it was.
Yeah.
So
someone did once say to me, never buy a shower that's too finished early. Because like, if it looks great as a Tosai, unless you're buying it as baby for baby champ, it's like, no, buy a project.
You see, that one I do buy into. I've always sort of, as a generalization, that ugly young fish become beautiful big fish, and beautiful young fish become ugly big fish. But that is a mass generalization, because there are, like you said, yes, there are a lot of cases, but it's understanding the sort of Sumi that it is, because there's some Shiros, for example, that would show all their Sumi at a young age.
Yeah.
And I've seen this, there's some variants of the Omasako strain show all the Sumi at a young age and have you thinking, no, don't go near that one.
Yeah.
But as they grow, it just holds, everything stays, and the Sumi just thickens. It keeps thickening underneath. However, there's also ones I've seen in other lineages. Kaneko was a prime one of this, that shows some Sumi early, but it never gets any depth to it. So yeah, you're right. It just starts growing. You still have a Sumi pattern, but there's no depth and no shine to it. It's just very flat, uninspiring Sumi.
Yeah.
So again, good generalizations, but there's just always so many layers to all this stuff. It really is good fun.
But just to add to the Sumi thing, so one of the reasons I have started to up my KH is sort of, I think, and I'm intrigued what you think, I think that I've noticed that ponds with more KH tend to hold better Sumi. Like there's a few people that I can think of where I'd talk to them and I'd say, what's your parameters? And they'd have harder water, and all the showers, the Sumi looks thick black, lovely. Whereas a lot in softer water, unless they've obviously got properly deep pockets and they've got bulletproof ones, a lot aren't as good. Like a lot of mine, I wouldn't say are that great.
My bit with this again, Frank, is I don't think you can just drop Sumi into hard or soft and how it reacts. I think Sumi reacts more to the sort of, I'll say, chemical makeup of the water. You know, there's certain metals that you might have in low traces, fish safe levels that will affect Sumi more. So obviously when you're RO, you're stripping it all out. So, and this is what we see across Japan. You know, yes, we're saying soft water in general. Yes, it is. But then why are there some areas and some of Japan where they know they do really well with Sumi, and others that are terrible?
Yeah,
that's not hard. So that's the water makeup. You know, Nogami, I can't remember. I think it was manganese or magnesium. He's got underground water that's quite rich in one of those elements, and he had some purification units set up to strip it out as it comes up out of the ground. Yeah. You know, but weirdly, obviously that water in that very same village, and he's obviously specialising in Kohaku. In that very same water, you've got Umo's old facility, literally 100 metres away, who's raising Showa and doing a cracking job on the same water.
Yeah.
So it's real swings and roundabouts. And like I say, Mariju, that's going to tie into the appreciation a bit, but Mariju, great farm. Mariju Sumi, just in general in Showa, is a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
His water over here, that's very genetic in that. that it's going to leave you hanging, probably to the point where the Benny's all going to fall off before the fucking Sumi actually gets up. So it's a wild one with them. So much to it, but I believe that hard soft also comes back to the actual makeup of the water behind it all, as to how that actually affects your pigments, Sumi, Benny, and all the rest of it. So
the next one,
good conversation.
The next one is mixing foods. So like yourself, I've been through them all, and I do mean them all. Some make your water brown and stewy. Some make it powdery, awful. But I just stick to sake now. So what my plan for this year was to go through the year. A nice sort of 10-week break, no food at all. Still with the water quite warm. I have to hold 16 because I've got plecos in here. So I held 16 with no food whatsoever, just the odd bit just to make sure they was happy. Then as I brought the temps up, I just started off with a little bit of sinking wheat germ, then moved to balance. Then now I'm going to do growth and just growth. No, I did a bit of wheat germ, then some colour for 2 weeks on its own, then balance on its own. Now I'm going to do growth on its own. So my question to you is, the mixing of foods, my way of looking at it is, Saki's done the homework and found the perfect fat to carb ratio, proteins and all the rest of it. They've done their homework and they know they've made that food for a purpose. And I got sort of told, just listen to what they've said and just feed that. Don't mix it and mess with it because you'll upset the ratio of stuff. So the direct question is, what have you found to yield the best results? Mixing it or just using it on its own?
Are you talking about even mixing you're staying within sake Koi but mixing the different ranges together?
No, yes, staying within sake Koi, but not mixing it, just sticking to one food for one job. So do you say you stick to one food?
No,
or do you mix?
Not the not mixing thing is just bollocks. I don't know why, because you want to mix. This is one thing again I love about sake. It gives me the options because they've developed four foods within that range. In fact, I'm going to forget multi-season. I'm honestly, you know how much I rave about the stuff. I'm not a big fan of multi-season. Balance, growth, colour. 3 very practical foods for 3 very different purposes, and they are very different in how they perform. So depending on what you need at any given time, I would say, listening from what you just said, Frank, there was probably a bit too much faffing there for me in different mixes and changes and all the rest of it. I'm not a big wheat germ fan. Never have been.
No, well, this year there'll be no wheat germ. Me and my mate did the trial, and we're like, no, just balance.
My experiences of using wheat germ in the past is it makes them quite flabby. Because ultimately you're still feeding something that probably at temperatures you might really dismiss feeding full stop. But so not a big wheat germ fan. I'd take that out of the equation. The temperatures you're holding at, you're going to breeze it with balance anyway, and just keep them ticking over. And to be honest with you, even at the sort of what it says on the sake Koi packet for balance, I'd be quite comfortable using balance down to about 12 degrees. Because your feed levels are so minimum, it's not crazy high fat. You know, it's fat levels that really concern me in food when you're at lower temperatures. That's the bit we've really got to watch. But so I'm all about, it's depending what I'm doing with the batch of fish. Absolutely no issues mixing. If you need full colour intensity, so if you're pushing, say for a show, you think I really need to hit the Benny hard now. Absolutely, you're just going to feed 100% colour food. There's no point mixing it. You want it to get in there and do the job as quickly as possible. In my circumstance right now, however, I'm focusing on growth, yes, but I also know that I need to support the colour. There's absolutely no way. If I just focus on hitting growth in the temperatures and how hard I'm pushing them now, what I'm going to have to end up doing is I'm going to knock the colour development back over quite a long period of time. Because as well as growing them, colour development, I think I've mentioned this before, it's like layers of paint. You're building it up, building it up, building it up over years. And what you don't want to do, say you cut daylight for a few months, all you're going to be doing is stripping back some of them layers and stripping back the development for a few months. Because what you don't want to get is, say you're developing or trying to develop a shower up to a finished show specimen. What you don't want to do is get to a point where all of a sudden the Sumi is naturally peaked at, say, 5-6 year old, but you're massively behind with the Benny because you've not been working on it.
Yeah.
So even given this growth, it's vital that I feed colour food right now to keep colour progression on track to some degree, as the environment and the circumstances are working against it. And then I choose the mix dependent upon the varieties that I've got as well. So in a general pond, say mainly Goshki based, I'll probably generally use 2/3 growth to 1/3 colour. I just want that bit in there to support the colour development while I'm pushing the growth. And then as it sort of drops down in the autumn, I might bring that up and start pushing a bit more colour, or generally have that period where I've got them sat at sort of 18 degrees after the sort of autumn period's passed, and use an element there to condition them a bit more if I want to. But no issues mixing it. The food is going to perform, because the whole sake range is balanced.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like my issue with mixing would be if you was going to put sake akari and then mix some Rice Krispies in with it.
No.
You know, that then is going to defeat every objective.
Yeah.
If you're in there, you do it. And even other additions to the pond, you know, treats. I'm not dismissing treats, you know, certain ones are great, but it's other additives you might throw in, such as silkworm pupae, for example. Silkworm pupae is great, but you really no need, because it can be a real heavy pollutant of your pond and your water, where sake growth's going to do it all anyway, without that heavy pollution that can come from it. And likewise with balance, if you're choosing to use balance, but you've got, say, nice 18-20 degree water where you think, I don't need to hit the growth, which I wouldn't advise the growth at that temperature unless you're tactically trying to bulk them fast, then you know, no harm having, you know, some colour mixed in with your balance just to hit that side a bit harder. But certainly no need for all that switching, because let's say if I was working from that method right now, I'd need to be feeding growth because of my water temperatures, otherwise they'd be like skinny eels.
Yeah.
I'd have a full 5-6 month growing season, then I'd have to probably spend as much time again just recovering the colour to get it back to where it should have been after that 6 months, if you follow me.
Yeah.
You want to keep it all going. It's all a process, because likewise you want your 5-6 months of growing, then you want to ease off, bit of conditioning, bit of rest, getting ready, prepped for that next growing season where you go again.
Yeah. I mean, like at the minute, I'm literally just in the growing phase, let's say. But I would probably add a little bit of colour in there just to support it while they are going for it. But I definitely wouldn't be doing colour. I wouldn't be rushing to get back on the colour on its own anyway. Just like you say, blend a bit in.
Yeah, you don't need to, right? I don't foresee any sort of time really, other than serious show conditioning.
Yeah.
But even then, even when you start on that process, you've got to plan it out, because you want a period. You think about that whole preparation process. If you look at it from Japan or even over here, you've got size class targets to hit. So you're working with keeping fish in certain sizes, ideally wanting to max it out within the upper limit of the size class that you're in. So you're doing that. You want to build the body right up, because you've got to bear in mind throughout all this, you're going to have a period, ideally, of 7 days without feeding prior to a show. So you've got them 7 days. If you give 7 days with no food and you're sat at 25 degrees, all them gains over several months will just be stripped back in such a fast time. It would shock you. So you've got that to consider. Then you've got colour conditioning to consider. Then that's obviously, you know, multiple elements, Benny, Sumi, Shiroji, depending on what we're dealing with. So you want to get that body, you want to build the colour. So this might be a growth period, let's say growth colour mix, then think, right, now I need to hit the Benny hard. So you go in and hit the Benny, but the minute you do that, for sure, you're going to lose Shiroji a bit. Just with that intense growth and colour food. So then you've got to work on that Shiroji, and then bring that to a point where you've got all that right. You've got a right water temperature where when you stop feeding, you don't lose too much mass, 18 degrees being that ideal one, where you can do all this, you can get everything nicely conditioned, then you step off the food. And after that 7 days, you've got your fish absolutely prime, ready for your show. What you can see there, that's at least a good year's worth of planning. That's a 12-month schedule leading up to one show.
I'm not.
You can
I'm
see
not
that. No,
I'm
but it's just an interesting one to get it into, and then you can see how the sort of show diary over here completely fucks all that up, because in Japan, this is
I wouldn't do one.
Yeah, the shows are all timed around the seasonal elements of koi production.
Yeah.
So you've got breeders. I mentioned Nogami. He is an absolute master. He primes his fish in a mud pond. Everything's timed, ready. Generally, he likes to compete at Nogyosa and Nagaoka show. So they're all sat in that harvest season, and the last bit of preparation in his mud pond is maxing them fish out, knowing that he harvests the pond on X date. It's got X number of days in a concrete pond, which is going to make it actually look better for a few days, but also that there's a number of days, if he leaves it too long, the stress elements will kick in and it'll actually dip off. He does all that, time to perfection, ready to get that fish into that show. It's absolute peak. But then after that fish is back in fish house, and it's going nowhere for a while.
Yeah.
So got off track there a bit, but there we go. Hope it's added some value for someone.
Last question.
Yep.
So since COVID, I feel like everything's changed with the way most people go and buy. Like for the people that go to Japan, buy their fish, stand by a pond, scratch and sniff. Is it any good? A lot of it's been done, what seems to be over the internet, sending videos, and then with like auctions and stuff. This is sort of similar to a question that the bloke last week asked.
Yeah.
But do you think we'll ever get back to the point of where you can actually go out, liaise with the breeder, pick his brains and buy fish, or do you think it's all going to be auction jobs now?
No, we're coming. I think the auction culture, I think I mentioned this, that's been a shift anyway. That's coming more and more, just as breeders do have headaches of keeping a lot of people happy. There's only so many fish. There's only so many of the really good fish, and always more people that want them. So they have to find mechanisms to deal with that without pissing everybody off. That's just a reality of business for them. I've had the same issues myself. There's only ever so much that good stuff that everybody wants. When I get a batch of tanchos, for example, I get 40 tanchos. I've got 60 customers who want them. But what do I do in that instance? Because the minute I just let one person come and take their pick first, everyone else after it's just pissed off. So I think that's why you might see the auctions and different mechanisms, even behind the scenes, more mechanisms that a lot of you guys don't see. WhatsApp sales, blind bidding for fish and stuff like that, all becoming more prevalent. But I see that as a peacekeeping mechanism more than anything. If we look at Dainichi, Sakai with the auctions, from a sort of business perspective, they make sense. It's better to let the people decide the price. I once sat with one of the main staff at Dainichi, and he just basically said, honestly, the auctions are the best places, because if you try and get Shigeru pondside and buy fish, he'll have you. Right. And that's it. You've got a guy there who obviously clearly knows what he can get for stuff. He's got more money than anybody needs, and generally doesn't give a shit. That's his attitude. So when you're there one-on-one, it's a different game, and you can probably snatch some better deals in the auctions, in all honesty.
Right.
So we will get back out there, though. That is coming. Japan just needs to open its borders back up.
Like for this year, I decided I wasn't going to buy any fish this year.
Yeah.
But I'd hung my nose over a few, but with the auctions, you're against the world. So it's like, who's going to pay the most? Some of the lads from Asia, and that they've got deep pockets. Yeah. And if it's any good, they're buying it.
I mean, it's just where people see value, and this is not just all of a sudden we're just getting to see more of it because it's in auctions that more people can access. This is no different. I have sat the last Dainichi auction I was sat in was an eye opener, because we can hear stories of fish going for X amount of thousands of pounds, and you can probably question, is it real? Is it really happening all that much? My God, yeah. So we were sat there, everybody who's anybody in the koi world sat at a Dainichi auction. And you got some of the big players, Max Koi Farm, Singapore, and Maru, who's one of the agents who's got a lot of big Chinese customers. And these guys, I mean, it's just insane. So how it played out, we're watching two fish. I remember it now. It was a 2-year Sankey at Dainichi that by Sans eye, I actually saw it in the fish house, and I think it was bent. But that aside, the bidding went on here. It ended up with just these two in the end. Bid, and it just kept going. That fish got up to nearly 70 grand.
Yeah.
In sterling for a 2-year Sankey. It wasn't spectacular. It was very nice, but it wasn't spectacular. And that's where that got to. So, and in the end, it took one of them to stand up and say, you take this one. We can see what's happening here. Several fish down the line, another one crops up. I think it was a shower at that point. It ends up with them two again. They literally let it get to a certain price, which was similar to the other one, the Sankey, and the other guy, I think it was Max that second time, turned around and said, go on, you take that one. You know, that's best parts of 140 Gs there in two 2-year-old fish.
You know, you could come out in the morning and it's brown bread.
Yeah, but it happens so much more. Then you get other elements thrown into the mix. You got to remember, I've known when I've been in them Dainichi auction rooms when Narita's bidded. It was the last Dainichi Toyota auction. I wanted a few pieces. I really done my own work on, thought I want these. And I was just going tit for tat, bid. I thought, who the fucking hell, honestly, who is on the other side of this? Because this is just ridiculous. Bid. And I gave up. I just thought this is just getting silly. And sure enough, about an hour later, saw him posted up on Narita's Facebook page. Because his attitude, I mean, the guy calls himself number one koi. He has got a killer attitude. When he's in the physical auctions and he puts his hand up, I can guarantee it's not going down. I guarantee you, because his reputation's at stake as well.
So what you're saying then is you think the auctions are here to stay, but there will be people going back out there and being able to do it a little bit more the old school way.
Yeah, as soon as we can. No, I'm itching to get that. I was supposed to. At the minute, you can get with a visa. It's just the application for it and everything's quite drawn out. I had all mine set. I was supposed to be going I think it was April, but sort of work got in the way of it all. So we are at that point, and you will see a lot more dealers return this autumn. That I can guarantee you. Whether or not hobbyists can get, I don't know. Because if the visa process is there, it's unlikely you'll see too many hobbyists because there's a lot of work involved in all that. Just alone, it's too busy. It's down to the embassy in London. Yeah, you know, which is going to be it's a lot of effort for people that. So yeah, it's not far off, but obviously Japan as a nation, very skeptical people, and the pandemic is still quite frightening the life out of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So they're skeptical of foreigners in general, but foreigners bringing COVID in, not good.
No, I've had the cough. It's not that bad. Some people get it worse than others.
No, I still remember my days, obviously the earlier days of me going to Japan. So I'm like a 12, 13-year-old kid, quite obviously not big compared to them, not a giant. And I remember the looks back then from adults, children. You still get them from children now, but certainly walking around Nagaoka, because it's not as sort of populated with foreigners as Tokyo. And just looking at you like you're a foreigner with an alien with 3 heads. Honestly, and great. It's all part of what I love about it, to be honest. But
would you say the way things changed in regards to not being able to go out there? Would you say that benefited the sort of stuff that you're buying? Would you say that benefited or made it harder?
For me, no different. I could do most of what I do. It's hard because, my God, breeders are not used to having to deal with stuff themselves.
Right.
So what they're used to is people rocking up, like me rocking up with an appointment arranged, sometimes like with Taniguchi, for example. I'll contact Taniguchi before, discuss what I need. He'll often prepare some fish. We go, I do all the work, take all the pictures, all the rest, give all the shipping details, everything done. Or likewise, a dealer might turn up with an agent, do that whole process as well. What they're not used to doing is having to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys just want to farm koi. That's all they want to do. So on that basis, you can see when all of a sudden they're having to select fish up themselves, try and understand what the customer wants, stick them in a bowl, and have people try and pick through. It's been tough, I think, on the retail side, because that's what they need, more select. When they're buying like that from Japan, you're trying to get, when you got that box, you want to try and get 7, 10 fish, whatever it is, exactly what you want. And that's a hard process. When a breeder chucks 7 fish in a bowl, he thinks are great through his eyes and how he understands fish, but has no perception of what the retail market wants. Mine, however, I buy differently. It's obviously when I'm getting stuff, I'm trying to buy big batches of fish, like the Shinoda heeled saurus. It's 1,000 fish. It's a deal that can easily be done over the phone. That's not a hard one, but getting the more select stuff, real tough one. It's been.
Yeah. So when you buy them, then is your thinning out process sort of, you get them in, any that aren't going to make the cut straight off the bat, are they more like your garden centre stuff, and then you sort of work it through, or
that's
slowly
the
filter them up?
that garden centre. It all comes down. It's knowing the breeders. This is important, knowing the breeders. A lot of the stuff, I buy Shinoda heeled saurus, even at the first, October it was last year, so the first round after they were harvested, I mean, they've probably been through 3 or 4 selections already. The quality, the base quality level at Shinoda for heeled sauri is high.
Yeah.
That's why it's no point. What would happen is what a dealer might do is try and go there and try and select a box of those fish. Yeah. Which won't happen, but this is the only difference. They're going and buying the same fish, but trying to select one box out of that pond that might have 1,000 fish in. Because of how I'm set up, I go in and just buy that whole 1,000.
Yeah.
And I do the selecting when I get back here, because otherwise, for me, the premium charge on hand selecting just means from a business, it makes it too hard for me to make any money in the process. Yeah. Being completely blunt about it. So I go in and do that selection and get all them varying levels of fish here then accordingly, because people need them at different price levels. Yeah. And that's what's been nice. Shinoda heeled saurus have started off in the market this year at like 30, 35 quid, I think. That's great. That's access for a lot of people to get on hold of a fish at a very, very nice entry price level. And then throughout the season, we've had jumbo tosai from them. There's going to be some absolutely off the chain Nisai come this autumn. So good stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right, that, mate, has been a super engaging chat. I'll thank you for it. I've got my appreciation bit to do now, however.
I hope we've got plenty of really geeky koi nerds that appreciate the chat.
I've enjoyed it. So thank you for bringing those questions in. Actually, just before I go, I'm going to just answer one here that's come in. Most retailers will tell you to feed wheat germ, and it's good to know if you're going to feed during winter, then feed balance. Is that what you're saying? Temperature related. All I'm saying is I'm not a big wheat germ fan. I'm talking if you're getting into the extreme cold water, it's probably better not to be feeding when it's extreme, because not only your fish, your system probably can't handle it. So if you're going to feed anything, a tiny bit of balance chucked in every other day or something like that is going to cause no detrimental effect to your fish. I can assure you of that. Yeah, looking great, pal. Looking great. So, right, thank you once again. I'm going to get on with this. Obviously, you can stay and obviously behind the scenes and watch this one play out, Frank. But I think people's gonna like this fish. So we'll get it up. Thanks again, buddy. Anyway,
Sam.
Right, folks. Let me see where these videos are hiding. So this Goshki is a Mariju Goshki that I acquired at Nisai. Chris was actually with me at the time. Now Mariju is a great farm. It's not one you hear a lot about. Mariju Tanaka. You probably know the name, but you don't get a lot of the fish, because I think their whole mentality towards fish is one I'm really in tune with. It's all about longevity. Some of their understanding of old lineages, parent fish, some of the old parent fish they've got. It's a learning experience for me every time I'm there and they sort of pull something up. And yeah, Gosanki's sort of like main speciality there. Great, really renowned for tanchos. Some really famous tancho shower. Goromo's another one, but in amongst that, there's the odd things they do, and there is a really famous Goshki All Japan winner that they had. I didn't actually know it was their fish until not long after I bought this one. So what I love about it, again, the reason you probably don't see a lot of the fish is the tosai are quite hard to understand and not very saleable tosai most of the time. And even at Nisai, you've got to really be in tune with what you're looking at to probably get a lot of these fish. Now, this wasn't necessarily that, but what I like about Maraju, you'll go look through these ponds and there's always something there that you just think, yeah, that could really do the business. So this Goshki, I can't remember. I think it was probably in January when I got it. So it had been sat there all throughout the autumn harvest, unsold. I'd not seen it. In between then, I don't think it'd been harvested or it'd been harvested. I weren't at the farm, whatever it was. Still there in January, and I couldn't quite believe it was for sale. So here it is. So it's a female fish, 2 year there. I think was around about 40 cm, 38, 40 cm. I think is where we were at with this one. And what I took from this and what I saw was just that body. First of all, got a really, really strong structure for a Goshki. Head shape, really, really desirable. Cracking mouth on it. Quite powerful on the shoulders and really quite thick heading down to the peduncle as well. So everything's sort of there, pleasing me. Not a big Nisai. It's Goshki. We're not expecting it to be used Nisai, but also the Nisai at Maraju in general are massive. It's not the way that they raise fish, but they've got good genetics. So, and yeah, you can't help but be in awe of that Benny as well. And the pattern, let's face it, really, really desirable pattern. Love the head pattern on it. I think it complemented the head shape really well. And that Benny is just delightful. We can also see on there as well, there's some sashi visible on the Benny, which is nice to see because that gives me ultimate peace of mind that there's a good bit of flexibility in there for to keep the Benny stable as it's growing. And yeah, you can see nice sharp kiwa pattern elements that I like as well. We can see there is a nice balance across the body and yeah, good odormate at the tail stop. It finishes quite well. All things that help with the visual impact of the body as well. So yeah, from what I've seen of the Maraju Goshki, they will darken, but it's going to be a slower process with those ones. And it was a good year for him. He doesn't spawn many Goshki, full stop. The set that he's got is quite inconsistent. And this wasn't even the set from the previous fish that won. So decided to keep it in Japan for the summer. And yeah, it got harvested that next season at Sansai. And excuse the video on this one, it was just shot on a phone. There it was at 51 cm at this point. And yeah, loads happened there. Most noticeably, you can see it's darkened. Even coming out of the mud pond, it's darkened, which was interesting. Really had darkened up a lot. And quite a big sort of growth spurt on that one. So coming up from 38 to 51, it's had a good spurt in the mud pond. Just get that video up again. Benny, you can see the Benny's progressed. It's got that real sort of vivid coloration coming to it now as it started to thicken. But yeah, big growth spurt. Now, this is the element of the body I sort of wanted to talk about because what I take from this is that fish there at 51 is looking quite slender, in my opinion. It's not got the power in the body, but it's still got all the elements in the bone structure. Everything that I want to be seeing from that Nisai is still there. Got, just it's looking like there's good length to it, which there is. It's had a good growth spurt. The head structure, everything's still there. It's just the body, but this can be quite normal. Such a spurt in length, which is clearly what it's been focusing on, can mean sometimes that yeah, the body's going to be lacking a little bit. It's a lot of skill to keep that proportionate growth of getting huge length and keeping the volume at the same time. Not to say it couldn't have been achieved, it probably could, but it hasn't in this case. But I wasn't concerned, and my feeling was that this next year, especially the total amount of centimeters gained, would be dropping off. It's absolutely going to, because that Nisai to Sansai spurt, Sansai to Yonsai, always going to fall off there. And that's when at that point the body would come back. So agreed to keep it in the mud pond. This is a long-term fish for me, by the way. I've got this, I'm eyeing this up as a potential All Japan contender, depending on how it goes. And it's just time. waiting, getting it all right. I think this year at harvest, all being well, is going to be its year, and hopefully ready to go. So yeah, came to harvest time the next season, and boom, there we have it. Look at that change in body. We can see again, we've got the body this year, but the background colour, the Sumi, has faded and lightened, which is never an issue for me, because that's, you know, as soon as that hit in the concrete pond, that's going to start coming up. But I think this hit the low 60s at this point. I can't quite remember, but massive change in body. And now at 4 years old, there's a massive element of maturity coming in here now as well, which is going to be helping that body pigment. I mean, look how clean that Benny's kept. Absolutely superb. And from conversations we've even had earlier, a lot of other fish from this parent set that I knew at the time, have seen since as well, didn't keep the Benny like this. This fish has been quite spectacular with it, which I put down to the individual sort of thickness of this colour I saw in it as a Nisai. And yeah, there we have it, folks. Yet to see it. Obviously, I'll see it this October / November. Hopefully in the flesh once again. Those last two updates that I've shown you, just been, you know, videos from the breeder that he sent me, but really excited on this piece. I'd expect we'll maybe be around, you know, mid 60s. I'm not expecting this fish to get much, you know, probably max out around the 70 mark, but size is not my game with this. You know, it's a superb fish. That body maturity kicking in. Hopefully get that Sumi development. Depending how it comes out of the mud pond, it's probably just going to need some time in the concrete pond, in all fairness, to get conditioned and that last edge put on it for the show. But there we go. Look, Nisai skipping straight through to Yonsai there. Incredible fish. One I'm yeah, really excited. And just that whole longevity. I knew from Nisai I was in this for the long run, and that's where I've been. And we did actually try and show it at Nisai, you know, because Shigeyoshi had kept it in the concrete pond after me buying it up until I think it might have been the Wakigoy that it went into. Can't remember. Trying to just obviously force the Sumi a little bit, but the fish just wasn't ready. You know, the body there in this eye, it wasn't ready to compete. It just wasn't the one. So fingers crossed, folks. There we go. Look at that once more. It's yeah. Let's see where it gets. Hopefully, it even gets harvested. We never know. It's the risk I take having them out there. But wow, can't wait to see it. And a special fish, because like then I don't think since that fish was spawned, there's been another spawning off of that parent set. So that's what you tend to find with Mariju. It's one of the things I do like about it. You know, it can be timing, and you get them one-off special fish from a special parent set. And yeah, who knows where that one will head. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you all for tuning in again. Apologies for not getting around to any of the questions. Frank did get me very engaged in that conversation, and it's gone on, but I hope you've got a lot of value from that. We will make an effort to get caught up on all those questions on a future episode. And yeah, don't forget, folks, Friday, look out for that video coming on the NND Mud Pond project, because I know this is one that's going to go down really well. So yeah, I can't wait to get that out to you all. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back next week.